The police lights bounced off the calm surface of the lake, casting red and blue ripples across the water. Two officers stood just beyond my backyard fence, radios crackling, their eyes locked on the small iron gate that led to the private lake access path. And there she was, Karen from the HOA, standing in the middle of my yard without permission, arms crossed so tight her nails were digging into her skin, glaring at me like I was some kind of criminal. "I told you to hand over that key," she hissed, pointing toward the small brass key hanging from my belt loop. "If you just listened, none of this would be happening." The taller officer stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. "Ma'am," he said, "you need to explain exactly why you trespassed on this property and why you demanded entry to a locked, privately owned gate." Karen didn't flinch. Instead, she jabbed her finger at me. "He's hiding something. I have every right to the key. The lake belongs to all of us." The shorter officer glanced at me, eyebrows raised, clearly wondering if any of what she said was true. My heart pounded, my palms were sweating, and yet, deep down, I knew this moment was only the start of something much bigger. I took a slow breath, looked the officer straight in the eyes, and began to tell him exactly how we got here. It all started 2 months earlier on a breezy Saturday morning. The lake shimmered under the spring sun, and the scent of fresh-cut grass drifted in the air. I was in my backyard planting marigolds when I first noticed Karen's shadow on the fence. "Morning," I called out politely, thinking she'd just stopped to chat. She didn't bother with small talk. "I need the key to your gate," she said bluntly, pointing to the sturdy iron gate I'd installed at the edge of my yard. It opened to a narrow gravel path that led to the lakefront. A path my grandfather had built decades before the HOA even existed. I blinked, caught off guard. "The gate's on my property, and the lake access is part of my deed. Why would you need the key?" Karen's lips curved into that type of smile that isn't a smile at all. "Because I'm head of the HOA, and I've decided all members should have access to the lake from here. It's shorter than the community path, and some of us don't want to walk all the way around." I try to keep my voice even. "Karen, there's already a public access point for HOA members. This is private." She tilted her head, almost like she was studying me. "You seem like a nice guy. Don't make this harder than it has to be." That was the moment I knew she wasn't asking. She was demanding. But I also knew something else. I wasn't going to give in. My grandfather's land wasn't just dirt and grass. It was history, and it was the one place I felt truly at peace. The next week, I started hearing whispers from neighbors. Some said Karen was talking about opening up the gate for everyone. Others mentioned she'd been spotted walking around my fence, measuring things. Still, I brushed it off. Maybe it was all just talk. Then came the day I found her trying to jiggle the lock. I'd stepped outside with a cup of coffee, and there she was crouched by my gate, fiddling with the latch. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. She stood up slowly, her cheeks flushing pink. "Just checking the lock," she said, as if that was somehow normal behavior. "You know, for safety." That was when I decided to be kind. Not because she deserved it, but because I refused to let her drag me down into the same pettiness. "Karen," I said quietly, "I'm not giving you the key, but if you'd like to use the lake, the community path is just 3 houses down." For a split second, I thought I saw something soften in her face, but it vanished just as fast. She turned on her heel and walked away without another word. Things went quiet for a while after that. I tended my garden, took my kayak out on the water, and waved at the neighbors who always waved back. I even started thinking maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe she'd moved on. But I was wrong. It was a warm Friday afternoon when I came home from work and found something strange. My gate, the one Karen wanted so badly, was hanging wide open. The lock was gone, and muddy footprints trailed across my yard, straight toward the lake. Before I could even process what I was seeing, I heard the sharp, distant sound of a police siren, and it was getting closer. The sirens wailed louder, and within seconds, a black and white cruiser turned down my street, tires crunching against the gravel shoulder. My heart thudded in my chest. I was still standing by the open gate, gripping the broken lock in my hand like it was a piece of evidence. The car stopped right in front of my driveway. Two officers stepped out, scanning the scene like they'd walked into the middle of a mystery. The taller one spoke first. "We got a call about trespassing and possible property damage. Is this your residence?" "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "And someone's been on my property without permission." Before I could say more, Karen appeared from behind the bushes along the lake path, panting slightly, a smug look on her face as if she'd just claimed victory. She marched right up to the officers. "Thank goodness you're here. This man is illegally blocking lake access from the neighborhood." I told him to hand over the key, and he refused. So I had to. The shorter officer cut her off. "Ma'am, are you admitting you entered his property without permission?" Karen blinked, then squared her shoulders. "I'm the HOA president. I have authority over community rules. And this," she waved toward my gate, "is supposed to be open for everyone." The taller officer glanced at me. "Do you have proof this gate and path are part of your private property?" I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the photo I'd taken of my property deed. The description clearly outlined the boundary lines, including the path all the way to the lake. I held it up for him to see. "It's been in my family for 3 generations, I said. Karen crossed her arms, unimpressed. "That doesn't matter." "I've decided no, ma'am," the officer said firmly. "That's not how this works. HOA rules can't override property law." Her face tightened, but she didn't back down. Instead, she stepped closer to me, lowering her voice so the officers couldn't hear. "If you think you're going to win this, you're wrong. I'll make sure of it." I stared at her, realizing that this wasn't just about a gate anymore. This was about control. And if I gave her an inch, she'd take the whole lake. The officers took statement from both of us, their notepads filling quickly. Eventually, they told her she needed to leave and that further trespassing could result in charges. She shot me a look that could have frozen fire and stomped down the sidewalk, muttering under her breath. After they drove away, the yard fell quiet. I closed and secured the gate with a temporary chain, determined not to let this happen again. I told myself I'd seen the worst of it, that she'd gotten her warning and would back off. But the next morning, I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. A metallic clinking and low voices outside my window. I pulled on my jacket, stepped onto the porch, and froze. There were 3 men I'd never seen before standing by my gate, holding tools. And Karen? She was right there with them, pointing at the hinges. When I called out, she turned to me with a smile so sweet it made my skin crawl. "Oh good, you're up," she said. "We're removing this gate today." The words hung in the air like a bad echo. Removing my gate? On my property? I stepped off the porch slowly, my fists clenching without me realizing. "Karen, you and your friends need to step away right now," I said, my voice low and steady. One of the men, a stocky guy with grease on his jeans, looked at me, shrugged, and said, "We're just doing what she told us." She said the HOA approved it. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "The HOA doesn't own this land. You're trespassing. You're about 2 minutes away from the police showing up again." Karen rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting. The neighborhood voted, and we agreed this gate should be removed for easier lake access. It's nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" I said, my voice rising. "You broke my lock. You brought strangers onto my property. You've been harassing me for weeks." She smiled like she thought she was winning. "It's only harassment if I lose." That was the moment I realized she wasn't going to stop unless I made her stop. But I also knew blowing up right then would only give her more ammunition. I pulled my phone out and started recording. "Karen, for the record, you are trespassing with 3 unknown individuals, attempting to dismantle private property without consent. This will be sent to the police." The stocky man hesitated, lowering his wrench. "Ma'am, maybe we should—" "Don't you dare stop," Karen snapped at him, glaring. "This is community property, and we're within our rights." I stepped closer to the gate, blocking their tools. "You have 10 seconds to leave before I call 911. And this time, I'm pressing charges." Her nostrils flared, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. The men looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable. Finally, one of them muttered, "This isn't worth it," and walked off. The other 2 followed, but not before Karen hissed, You're going to regret this." She stormed off down the sidewalk, clutching her phone, probably already calling the rest of her HOA buddies. For the rest of the day, I reinforced the gate. New hinges, a heavier lock, and a steel chain. I even installed a small motion camera aimed directly at it. The lake shimmered peacefully behind it, almost mocking the chaos this little strip of land had caused. By nightfall, I'd convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to end it. I sat on my porch with a glass of sweet tea, letting the evening breeze calm me. But then I noticed it, a faint glimmer of light, flickering through the bushes near the lake path. At first, I thought it was a firefly, but then it moved, too steady, too purposeful. It was a flashlight, and it was coming straight toward my gate. The beam of the flashlight cut through the dark like a slow-moving searchlight. My stomach nodded. Whoever it was, they were trying to be quiet, too quiet. I set my glass of tea down on the porch rail and grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over the camera app. The crunch of footsteps on gravel grew louder. Then I saw the shadow. Tall, deliberate, moving along the path that ran behind my property. The light stopped right at the gate. I could make out the silhouette of someone bending down, fiddling with the new lock I put on earlier that day. "Hey!" I shouted, my voice sharper than I intended. The figure froze for a split second, then straightened. The flashlight swung in my direction, blinding me for a moment. When my eyes adjusted, my jaw dropped. It was Karen. She was wearing a hoodie pulled tight around her face, as if that could somehow hide the fact that she was the only person in the neighborhood obsessed enough to be out here at night. "What are you doing?" I called out. "It's almost midnight." Her voice floated back, calm but with an edge. "Checking the gate. Making sure it's safe for everyone." I laughed, the kind of laugh you do when you're too angry to believe what you're hearing. "You mean breaking in again?" She stepped closer to the gate, resting her hands on the top rail. "If you just hand over the key, this wouldn't have to happen." I turned on my porch light, flooding the yard in a warm glow. "Karen, go home. This is your final warning." She tilted her head, that strange smile curling her lips. "You keep acting like you're the victim here, but you're the one keeping something beautiful locked away." My patience snapped. "The lake is open to every HOA member through the community access. You're not entitled to walk through my yard to get to it. That's the law." She didn't move. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the fence. Then she took a step back, turned, and slowly disappeared down the path, the beam of her flashlight shrinking into the distance. I locked up, double-checked the motion camera, and tried to sleep, though every creak of the house had me sitting up in bed. The next morning, I went out to check the gate. My stomach dropped. The lock was still there, but deep scratches marked the metal around it. Someone had tried, and failed, to cut it open. I was still standing there, holding the lock in my hand, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my neighbor, Jake. "You might want to look outside," it read. "Karen's got a ladder, and she's heading toward your fence." I spun around so fast, I nearly dropped my phone. Sure enough, through the narrow gap between my garage and the hedge, I saw her. Karen, marching toward my fence with a folded aluminum ladder balanced on her shoulder. I strode down the driveway, my pulse pounding. "Karen," I shouted across the yard. "Put the ladder down." She didn't stop. "You left me no choice," she called back. "If you won't give me the key, I'll just go over." The audacity nearly knocked the wind out of me. "You try that and you'll be in cuffs before your feet touch the ground." She reached the fence and propped the ladder up against it like she was setting up for a house painting job. My mind was already flipping through options: call the cops, run over and block her, or just record every second for evidence. I decided on the last one. I hit record and walked closer, making sure to get her face, the ladder, the whole scene. "This is harassment," I said loudly. "You're trespassing and attempting to scale my fence." Her response? A smirk. "You can't trespass on community property. That's not what the law says." I shot back. Before she could put a foot on the rung, Jake came jogging up from his yard, still in his work boots and holding a wrench. "Karen, you've lost it," he said. "This isn't your land. Leave before you make this worse for yourself." Karen whirled on him. "You stay out of this. You're only siding with him because he lets you use his dock. Jake threw his hands up. I'm siding with him because he's right. Now get out of here. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd back down. But instead, she started climbing. One rung, then two. My thumb was already tapping 911 on my phone when I heard the distant sound of tires on gravel. The cruiser came into view faster than I expected, pulling right up to the curb. Both officers from before stepped out, looking like they'd aged 5 years since the last time they saw us. Karen froze halfway up the ladder, her hands gripping the rails like they might disappear if she let go. The taller officer sighed and said, "Ma'am, step down." Now, she hesitated, muttering something under her breath, but eventually clambered back to the ground. I expected the cops to just issue another warning, but this time, their tone was different, sharper, more serious. "We've already told you once," the shorter officer said. "You come back here again, and it's not going to be just a citation." Karen's face flushed crimson, but she forced a tight smile. "Understood," she said flatly. Then she picked up her ladder and walked away, her shoulders rigid. The officers turned to me. "We'll file a report," the taller one said. "But you might want to think about extra security." Something tells me she's not done. He wasn't wrong. That night, the motion camera pinged my phone at 2:13 a.m. When I checked the footage, my stomach dropped. There was Karen again, only this time, she wasn't at the gate or the fence. She was kneeling by the corner of my house, doing something with what looked like a small crowbar. I stared at the grainy footage, my pulse roaring in my ears. She wasn't just poking around anymore. She was trying to pry open the crawl space hatch near the foundation. I didn't even think. I grabbed my jacket, phone, and flashlight and stormed outside, my bare feet slapping against the cold porch wood. "Karen!" I barked into the darkness. The beam of my flashlight caught her mid-crouch. She jerked up like a kid caught with their hand in the cookie jar, the crowbar still in her grip. "You can't keep me out forever," she snapped, her voice shaking more with rage than fear. "You're breaking into my house now," I shouted. "This isn't about a gate. You've lost your mind." I heard footsteps pounding behind me. Jake, half-dressed in sweatpants, wielding that same wrench from earlier. "Call the cops now," he yelled. I already had 911 on the line. My voice was firm but clipped. "This is a break-in progress. Same suspect as before. Send units immediately." Karen must have realized the hole she dug for herself, because she dropped the crowbar and bolted toward the lake path. But Jake was faster. He intercepted her halfway across the yard, blocking her escape. "You're not going anywhere," he said, planting himself in her path. She tried to push past, but the sound of tires screeching onto the street stopped her cold. 2 cruisers this time, lights blazing, sirens wailing loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. The officers sprinted over, flashlights slicing through the dark. "Hands where we can see them," the taller one ordered. Karen froze, then raised her hands slowly, muttering something about community rights under her breath. The shorter officer stepped forward, pulling out his cuffs. "You're under arrest for trespassing, attempted burglary, and property damage." For the first time since this nightmare started, her confidence cracked. "You can't do this to me. I'm the HOA president," she screamed, struggling as they cuffed her. The taller officer shook his head. "You are the HOA president. Pretty sure that's about to change." Neighbors had started gathering on their porches, whispering, filming on their phones. Jake leaned over to me and said quietly, "She's never living this down." As they walked her to the cruiser, Karen turned her head, locking eyes with me. "You think you've won? This isn't over." But the door slammed shut, and her voice was swallowed by the hum of the engine. The officers took my statement, photographed the crowbar, the scratches on the hatch, and the gate. By the time they left, dawn was breaking over the lake, soft gold spilling across the water. I stood by the gate, breathing in the cool air. The lake was quiet again, the way it used to be. For the first time in weeks, I felt safe. Jake came over, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. "You know," he said with a grin, "if she wanted lake access that bad, she could have just asked to come fishing with us." I laughed, a deep, relieved laugh. "Yeah, but some people can't stand being told no." And with that, I turned the new key in the lock, the metal click echoing like the final chapter in a very long, very wild story. Because this time, the gate wasn't just locked. It was mine, and no one, not even a Karen with an HOA badge, was taking it away again.